Seahawks fans, wherever you may be, welcome back for another edition of the Seahawks Playbook podcast. Join your host, Bill Alvstad, and co-host, sports writer and football analyst Keith Myers, as we talk Seahawks football. Hey, Seahawk fans. Welcome back to another episode of the Seahawks Playbook podcast. I'm your host, Bill Alvstad, sitting down with co-host Keith Myers, here to talk Seahawks football. We're talking about the safety position group in our continuing series covering all of the Seahawks 90-man roster. We're up to the safeties. We've got one more show to go after this. We're going to take a look at special teams. And welcome in. It'll be a fun conversation today.
Yeah, this is an interesting group because it seems very top heavy, but that at the same time, I think there might be more talent here than most people think. At the same time,
I agree.
I think you're higher on this group than I am. So, getting into all of the nitty gritty of all of that will be interesting.
Yeah, I think we agree. With Quandre Diggs, I think we're in agreement with Quandre. Where it gets a little wishy-washy is Jamal. We'll talk about that. I love the Julian Love signing. I personally fell in love with this player in the evaluation process after we got him. I just think he's the perfect fit in this roster, specifically because he does so many things so well. And then we drafted a guy, Jarek Reed, that the team absolutely loves in this draft late, 7th round, but the team values him higher than that. And it'll be interesting
7th round
to
or
see.
6th round?
Is it 6th round? I guess it was 6th round. Sorry, don't want to shortchange him on that because we drafted the running back guy in the 7th round. And then the player that Pete Carroll called out specifically about who stood out in camp that was unexpected for you, Jonathan Sutherland's name came out. A kind of a strong safety type, hybrid safety linebacker / linebacker guy out of Penn State, went undrafted, came into camp and kind of surprised a little bit. So got a group, beyond that as well to talk about, but let's start talking about the top. And
let's start with Quandre Diggs is the top.
Yeah, let's do that.
He genuinely is. Came back last year with a big contract and didn't really live up to it for the first half of the season, struggled a bit, then turned it on and was back to the guy that we remember from the year before and played really well down the stretch and I don't have any issues with Quandre Diggs going forward as a starter. He's a very good free safety.
Yeah, it looked like he was still favoring that leg last year. He came back slightly too soon. I mean, maybe that's just me. He played that way, though. He played conservative, slow, avoiding contact a little bit. He's a smaller guy, 5'9", 200 pounds, not terribly small, but small enough. 4'5", 40, not terribly fast, but very instinctive. Just knows where to be in the defense, knows where everyone else should be. He's very confident in that way. It's interesting that one of the things I noticed about Quandre Diggs is that he really covers for a lot of the missteps that the corners have in this team. And you had some young corners last year. And
there were a lot of missteps.
And he wants to make sure that he's covering for those guys. And so he kind of gets out of his own responsibilities sometimes to kind of take a couple steps in a certain direction. But other than that, I thought he played really well. 56 solo tackles, a bunch of assist tackles beyond that, 4 interceptions. Overall, 73.4 grade out of Pro Football Focus. I really like Quandre Diggs.
And a lot of that production came in the second half of the season. I agree with you. I think athletically he was fine, but a lot of coming back from an injury like that is mental. And you just don't trust the knee quite as much as you should. And I think he was dealing with that a little bit throughout the season until, everything just kind of clicked for him, and
Yeah.
it looked really good down the stretch. So I'm excited to have him back at full strength and to get another year with him because he was re-signed for a reason, and at the contract level that he is, they're paying him $18 million a year.
Yeah.
That's a lot of money for a safety,
Yeah.
but he's shown to be worth it, and I think that is the thing that is most notable about Quandre Diggs.
Yeah, 13.5 of that is guaranteed. It's just it's a big sum to pay Quandre Diggs. I like Quandre Diggs. I think that, he's probably he's definitely a top 10 safety for me in this league. Could we upgrade that position at some point? Well, he's not Earl Thomas level,
He's not Earl
but
Thomas, but okay, you're great.
nobody is.
You're judging him against one of the greatest safeties of all time.
Yeah.
And I get that he had his issues in off the field and um in the locker room with certain guys, especially after he left Seattle. But on the field, Earl Thomas is one of the greatest safeties you
Yeah.
will
And I'm
ever
not trying to
see.
throw Diggs under the bus. I think you're misinterpreting what I'm saying.
No, I'm just saying, like, if that's the bar that you use to judge,
Well, it's certainly
um,
not the bar. I mean, I'm realistic as
not for
anybody.
you, not for you. I'm talking more to our listeners. If you're like, well, he's not as good as Earl Thomas. You know what? Find me a safety in the current NFL that's as good as Earl Thomas was in his prime. Find me one. You're not.
Right.
You're probably not going to find one.
What I was going to say is Quandre Diggs is the most steady safety in the league. He's not spectacular at any
Yep.
one thing, although he's got a hell of a ball skills. I mean, he can play. He can play.
Mm-hmm.
And he's a good quarterback for the defense on the back end. I mean, he really puts guys in a position to be successful.
And
He
that's
gets
the
after
thing.
those corners
He's
and
a
makes sure those
captain.
guys are successful.
He's a captain, and that can't be understated, right? You have to recognize what he means to a really young defense, especially last year where it was him and that's it as far
Yeah.
as veteran players. There was no Bobby Wagner last year. It was really just Diggs out there as
Yeah.
the
No
vet,
Jamal Adams after half of a game either.
half a quarter. Um,
Right. Yeah.
and
So Quandre Diggs, I
yeah,
mean, to have him back there, you add, we just completed a cornerback show that just came out, and
that is a
you
really young group.
yeah, and you put Quandre Diggs in there, it really adds to the depth of that whole room because of their age um and guys come back in their second year like Woolen and Jackson. You get Diggs now, he's a little bit more confident in those guys to be able to do their jobs, and the whole thing just kind of works better. And I
Mm-hmm.
think we can look forward to that this year. Now, that's Quandre Diggs. Now the other guy at the top, and I'll spend just a couple minutes on Jamal Adams, and then I want to move on to Julian Love.
This could be a whole show if we want to talk about Jamal Adams.
Yeah, because you and I disagree a little bit, but not much, not in the basics. And the basics are the facts, and the facts of the matter is Jamal Adams has been unhealthy and hasn't played up to his trade status, and it really kind of
And
rubs people
contract.
the wrong way a little bit, and I get that.
Yeah.
Here's the deal though. When and everything
When
needs to have an asterisk. When healthy, blah 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 blah. When healthy, Jamal Adams is a really nice player for this defense and can be, depending on the way that they use him. Now, if you're going to have Jamal Adams go deep in coverage and be kind of the second too high safety with Diggs, he's not good at that. He just isn't. Is he great in the box, kind of coming off the edge, rushing the passer once in a while? Yeah, he's pretty darn good at that. And so I would like to see the team focus on using him that way. Here's the problem. Jamal Adams doesn't have the body to hold up on the type of player that they want him to be and the type of player instinctively that he is, which is a box safety. If he was 6'2", 220 pounds, Cam Chancellor mode, he would be a different type of player. But he's a little over 6 foot, 208 pounds, and he's got bad shoulders now, bad fingers, and a quadricep that was completely separated in his leg.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know what we're expecting from Jamal Adams. I don't think the team knows either. But here's the deal: all off season, we talked about contracts, and Jamal Adams' big, huge contract, the largest contract on this team, was sitting out there, and we probably could have moved off of him, and we could have saved some money. I think it was about $8.5 million, but we had eaten a ton of dead money.
Yeah,
But
there's a ton of
if we
dead
would have
money,
moved
but
off that contract.
with a June 1st, a post June 1st designation, you move off that contract, you gain a bunch of cap space that you could use. And honestly, what have you got from him in the last couple of years? You got a bunch of sacks in year one of the deal where he was terrible in coverage, but he gave you a bunch of sacks, and that was worthwhile. And then for the last 2 years, you've got nothing for your investment. And I get,
Those injuries
saying
are unrelated.
the
Shoulder,
trade
fingers, quad are unrelated.
true, but the trade is what it is. They overpaid. That sucks. The contract is what it is. They way overpaid. That sucks. I had to look at production. What has his production been during his time in Seattle, and what is that worth? He had he had half a good season his first year, and the last 2 years they've gotten nothing from him.
And you're
And now
holding a roster spot.
he's holding a roster spot and $18 million in cap space, and they've got nothing from him. He doesn't deserve a roster spot right now. Prove me wrong. Show me that you deserve a spot, because you don't deserve one.
The team disagrees with you. And it's not like I completely disagree with you. I think that you're right. He doesn't deserve it, but yet here he is. And the team decided to hold on to that contract. They haven't renegotiated it. I don't know exactly what's going on with Jamal. He's been rehabbing out of the facility in Texas.
Mm-hmm.
There's squishy language around his availability this season. Jamal says, he's going to be ready, blah, 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 in his videos and so forth. Pete's a little bit more subdued. Talks, he's working hard. He's trying to get back, blah, 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 blah. We just don't have an answer now. Let's wait until we get to camp. Anytime you hear Pete start saying stuff like that, they just really don't think that Jamal Adams is going to be available during, for the first game. And if that's true, I would say let's move on, because but if he is going to be ready, let's give him another shot. Let's give it a shot. I think the defense could be good with him in it.
I
The
think
question is,
could be good without him in it.
If he's in it, then it brings up a whole bunch of roster questions about playing time and snap counts, because you've got Julian Love, you've got Jarek Reed, you've got a couple of other cornerbacks that kind of fit into a hybrid role where they're playing in the slot. That means, where do you play Julian Love, who deserves to start and get significant snaps? Having Jamal Adams on this roster causes some issues in a number of ways.
Why did you get rid of Ryan Neal, who was a bargain for what he gave you?
Yeah, it doesn't make a lot of sense to me.
To hold on to a guy that's given you nothing for the last 2 years.
The reason I think that they moved on from Ryan Neal is they do have Julian Love, who they like, and is a hybrid type player who can play in the box when necessary, can play in the slot, can also play in that high safety role for you.
I think they moved on from Ryan Neal because he's not the greatest tackler. He's incredible in coverage for a safety. That's because he used to be a cornerback. But he missed a bunch of tackles last year. And this was a team overall that was terrible at tackling. And some of that was, came from linebacker issues, and some of it came from Ryan Neal. So while he was fantastic in coverage, that's not the only thing a strong safety has to do. I think that's why they moved on from Ryan Neal and signed Julian Love, is they wanted an upgrade in terms of that.
So getting back to Jamal Adams, this question will be answered, sometime this year. I think, regardless of what happens, I think the team moves on from him next year. I could be wrong. You thought that they would move on this year.
I
I thought
really
they
did.
I thought they might hold on to him and figure it out, and sure enough, they did. I don't agree with it necessarily, just because of all the things we just talked about. But he's still on the roster, so the Seahawks are going to bring him into camp if he's available. If he's not, that brings up a question: do you IR him, and what are the cost implications for that? Um, if you're holding on to him, you're thinking he's going to be available in first game, second game, third game, then you're going to cut another player that could have had that roster spot. So it's a conundrum. And then if he is on the roster and he is able to take snaps, you've got three safeties plus a guy in Jerry Reed they really like, plus a whole bunch of issues out of the corner room that can play in the slot. You've got too many people. You've got too
You got
many
a
players that play
you've
the
got a
same
lot of
position.
talent in the defensive backfield, while at the same time you've got holes at middle linebacker and nose tackle.
Yeah, roster construction. That's a toughie. That's tough.
I mean, you get the players when you can get them, and you. I like that they took best player available in the draft. It helped them build a couple positions of extreme strength, but they still have a couple of weaknesses on this defense, and it's right up the middle. And Jamal Adams is part of that. If he's not going to be able to come in and play at an elite level, then that's 18 million in cap space wasted.
Well, we could have got back 8 this year, but I see what
True.
you're saying. Okay, let's talk about Julian Love, a player I really like. Played for New York, came over in free agency. I think the Seahawks were lucky to get him. 5'11", 195 pounds, fourth round of 2019. Last year he had 80 tackles, a couple interceptions, overall grade 70 from Pro Football Focus.
80 tackles is a lot for a safety.
And that was just solo. Whole bunch of assists as well. The the thing about Julian Love that you like is his leadership qualities, locker room presence, and the fact that he can be a Swiss Army knife for your defense. Kind of like Jamal Adams. Only Julian Love has a history of staying healthy.
And
He can
Julian
play
Love
all
can
over
cover.
the
And
place.
Julian Love can cover.
Julian Love can cover. He's physical. He's just all around a great player. Perfect fit for this defense. So I really like Julian Love in that signing. I think it was one of the best value signings the Seahawks have had in a couple of years.
One of the things that got me about this, because at first I was like, they signed Love, they paid him when Ryan Neal's sitting there for for cheaper, and was a very good player for them last
Yeah,
year.
but
Why?
Julian Love, they only gave Julian Love 3.9 million. I mean, that's
Yeah,
not a huge thing for the value that he brings
it's
into this.
not what it comes. What got me with this is that 80 some tackles. That is a lot for a safety. And you know why it was a lot for a safety? Because he doesn't miss tackles. And that was the one rub on Ryan Neal. He was great in coverage. He was great at a bunch of things, but he missed a bunch of tackles. Julian Love doesn't do that. And they've upgraded in a way that this team needed to upgrade. They needed to miss fewer tackles.
Yeah,
That's
that's
why
true.
Cody
That's so
Barton
true.
That's why Cody Barton's gone, and it's why Ryan Neal's gone. And Julian Love offers you a similar quality as Ryan Neal, but he won't miss tackles. And so overall, that's why they made that move. Can he get on the field if Jamal Adams is healthy?
Oh, yes. You don't sit a player like Julian Love, Keith. You just don't. I mean, the guy shows up on film. I don't know if you've taken a chance
I
to look at
have.
him,
I
but
I
you
have.
don't sit a player like Julian Love
So you're playing him, in the slot,
in the
or
slot. Yeah.
and
So
you're
then where
and
does Witherspoon go?
and you're and you're rotating him. You're pulling um, Adams off the field at times when you don't
That means
need him to do
Adams truly
certain things.
becomes like a rover guy that only rushes the passer for you.
Yeah, so you're taking your $18 million a year safety and reducing him to a role player. Um, I mean, it's a good problem to have in that you've got so much talent at defensive back, But at the same time, like, how do you get all these guys on the field? You can't
It's
play dime
it's
every
going to be a
down.
problem. Yeah, no, it's going to be a problem. I think that, having Jamal Adams on this team when we had a 4-3 made more sense. Jamal Adams almost plays a will linebacker role
Mhm.
in a sense. And there might be a
Jamal Adams
spot for him like that.
doesn't make a lot of sense on this roster.
It doesn't. I
He really
agree.
doesn't make a lot of sense on this roster. You've got Love who needs to play. You've got Diggs that deserves to play. He's a great player. You've got young players. You've got a lot of corners, including young players that need playing time. I, I don't
Yeah.
see the value, and that's just me. I don't see $18 million worth of value out of Jamal Adams. I don't see $8 million
And out of
worth
all
of.
the group, we talked about corners last show. We're talking about safeties. Out of all these guys, there's no roster stashes available. There's no injuries that are going to prevent these guys from, except for Jamal,
Yeah,
that are going to keep these guys, and the next guy I want to talk about is Jarek Reed,
yeah,
as another
sixth round
player that
draft
you
pick.
talked about that needs that according to all reports is exceeding expectations. They love him. They like the way that he plays. He's kind of a,
Cool story.
cool story, but he's mature beyond his years. He works hard. He's overcome adversity. He's got a lot of experience. Started all 12 games in 2021. Same in 2022. Production was equal in both years. Good awareness, high football IQ, um, good production, route recognition, all that kind of stuff. They're excited to have him. Even though he's drafted in the 6th round, they valued him higher than that.
Yeah, I mean, this is they believe that they found a guy in the 6th round who could Quandre Diggs was a 5th round pick, right? Um, and has shown to be a much better player than your typical 5th round pick.
And they're
Um,
almost the same size.
yeah, and what you've got um, in Jarek Reed is a guy that they believe, like, very strongly is another Jamal or, I'm sorry, another, um, Quandre Diggs, a guy that's a lower round draft pick, but has the potential because of football smarts more than athleticism to be a very, very good player in this league. We'll see.
Yeah.
He's got a lot to prove. I mean, he does. Um,
Will he get a chance to prove it?
I don't know. That's the hard part. Um, it was also hard to see Ryan Neal ever getting a chance to play. And he stuck around 2 years on the practice squad before he got his first real playing time. Um, and he got a chance to show it and then, got a decent contract out of it. Um, I don't know if it's gonna take that long with Reed. I think he has an opportunity to show it. The team's gonna have to figure out what they've got in him and decide if he is worth letting one of their $18 million a year safeties go. Maybe not this year, but next year. Um, and he's got to prove that he's worth the spot. His draft position says no, but the team, the way they talk about him and the way the area scout that pounded the table for this guy, um, just a guy put his reputation on the line within the scouting department for this guy. That to me, I'm giving this guy a shot. I am reserving judgment. I'm not going to be like, he doesn't have a chance because of the depth over him. If a guy puts his reputation, his career reputation on the line to pound the table for a 6th round draft pick, um, who am I to prejudge? Get out there and play and let me see. I'm excited. I've never seen a guy that late in the round or that late in the draft get so much attention from a scout where he was just adamant this guy had to be a Seahawk.
Yeah, absolutely. But I
Yeah.
got one more player to talk about. I mean, there's a couple, but I've got one more guy. that the team really likes, and he's just come out of nowhere. And it's Jonathan Sutherland,
Mm-hmm.
kind of a hybrid safety linebacker guy. Went undrafted out of Penn State, 5'11", 202 pounds, 4.5, 540. Not spectacular speed by any means, but he's a box safety type. And of course, special teamer at Penn State. The team loves him. Pete Carroll raved about this guy. He doesn't talk about undrafted guys very often, especially this time of the year.
Not this time of year.
But they talk about Jonathan Sutherland as a
Yep.
kind of a guy that's going to make the roster. That's the way they talk about him, which
This is a
is
guy
crazy.
they've had plenty of guys that, especially safeties, that never saw the field as a safety, but they would trade fifth and sixth round picks to random teams in order to get a guy during cutdown because they could play special teams. Now they got a guy. They don't have to trade a pick to go get a guy that can play special teams. They just got one. He just shows up as an undrafted. This is the type of player that always frustrated me when I was covering this team, because you're like, where's the value? He will never see the field as in that position, but the team always loved him, and it took me a while to understand the value of guys like this.
Yes, which is why
Guys
we're
that,
doing a special team show next.
yeah, because this is a guy that makes the roster because he can cover on special teams, because he can get downfield and make a tackle in a way that other guys just simply can't. It's the Nick Ballors of the world that don't belong on a football field on defense, but look fantastic as a special teams player. And that's who Jonathan Sutherland is.
Yeah, yeah,
And maybe
I
he
agree.
develops into a guy that can also play safety. Who
Yes,
knows? At this point, it's safe to assume that's not who he is, but we know he can play on special teams, and that there's so much value in that to Seattle.
but you've only got 53 spots on a roster.
That's
You've
the
already
hard
got
part.
your special teams captain in Nick Ballore.
Mhm.
You've
Are you
probably
gonna
got
have
one other
another
position.
guy? Are
Yeah,
you
well,
gonna have
you just
another guy that doesn't have a job except for special teams?
and you talked about a cornerback in our cornerback show where he plays special teams, an undrafted guy coming
Mhm.
in that same way. Yeah, and there's only one or two guys on a roster every year that make the team just because of special teams, and they'll never see the field on in a position group. Um, so it'd be very interesting. Undrafted guy coming in. I mean, that's a big impression to make. A guy that's just going to make a team based on special teams.
Yeah.
Yeah, but they like him. So thought I would mention him. Throw that out there. Joey Blount is a guy that was hanging around the roster last year.
He's been hanging around the
Um,
roster for like 3 years.
has he?
Doesn't
I thought
doesn't get
no. He was
doesn't
undrafted last year, right? He was undrafted rookie free agent in 2022. I'll look him up.
really.
Yeah,
That's what I'm
but
looking for right now.
okay, you look him
I
up.
was under their end that he'd been around. He'd been on the practice squad for a couple of years, but maybe that's wrong.
Yeah. So
Yeah,
he's a
he's got 2 years experience.
well, this is his second year.
Okay.
So he's a good player. I mean, he's a good player.
He's a special teamer.
He's
He
a
got some playing time last year,
he's a free
when
safety type.
yep, when, Ryan Neal got nicked up a little bit in there, and so Joey Blount got a few snaps, on defense and got a chance to get in there and play, and, didn't screw things up.
Right.
Which it's hard to be like, but when you've got your 3rd string, safety in there because your first and second string are both hurt, that's about what you want. You just don't want them to screw things up, and he didn't. He played, um, did his job. They got him off the field and got, Ryan Neal back in there. So
Yeah. I would be shocked. Now, if you take a look at just free safeties, I think there's only one or two or possibly three on this 90-man roster that just play free safety. Julian loves a hybrid. He can go, play both, but Joey Blount would be a guy, and then Quandre Diggs, and then, you know, somebody
Morel
else.
Osling the third.
Yeah, maybe this guy. Um, Morel Osling the third, 6'1", 195, out of UCLA. Played a total of 40 games over 40 years at both safety and corner. So he's got some scheme diversity to him. Guy that's had a lot of opportunity to play and take snaps at the college level. Just not a spectacular player. Has a
Nope.
4.55 40. He's not athletic, a little bit slow. But Quandre Diggs ran a 4.5 something out of college as well.
That was the rub on Quandre Diggs and why he fell to the 5th round.
Yeah.
He's also 5'9", Quandre Diggs is. There's that. Julian Love can play both. Actually, Quandre Diggs can play both.
That's true.
And he played strong safety in Detroit before coming to Seattle. Seattle saw him as a free safety and they used him there. But then there have been times, I think the last 2 games, not this season, not this last season, but the season before, after a bunch of injuries, they actually moved Quandre Diggs to strong safety and played one of the guys they cut last year and didn't make the roster coming out of camp at free safety. The guy they traded to the Eagles and then later got traded again.
Yeah, the guy from Oregon. I can't remember his name right now.
Yeah. And they moved Diggs to strong safety. He's a hybrid. Yeah, there we go. Diggs actually, as much as we see him as a strong safety because he's been a starter at strong safety his time in Seattle, he's a hybrid guy that can play both the same way that Julian Love can. That's part of the reason why I really like the Julian Love signing, because now you got 2 hybrids, and so you can line them up parallel pre-snap and rotate one down and run one up, and it doesn't have to be predictable. Whereas even if you're going to try that with Jamal Adams, you know that Jamal Adams is rotating down into the box every single time, and not Diggs. So you can, like I said, you can line them up that way, but everyone knows what you're going to do. With Love in there with Diggs, now you have the option. You can rotate either guy down in, and I like that.
Cool. Morel Osling the third. Who knows what we've got there? Just a name right now. Count body. Ty Okada. 5'11", 200 pounds out of Montana State. Tested really well. 4.44 40. But the film is a little rough. So they just bring him in to have a closer look. Christian Young is a guy that is an interesting guy on this list.
He's a height, weight, speed prospect.
He's 6'1", 228 pounds, and rumor has it that he can play linebacker, but teams got him listed as a box safety. Played box safety in college, and we'll see. I mean, athletically, he could be a will.
6'1", 228. You put on a couple more pounds. You got, and he's a linebacker, but he runs like a safety. Guy's got a lot of speed, which guy that's that size with a lot of speed, that screams special teams.
Yes,
to me. And if he doesn't make the roster as a special teams guy, it's very possible he hits the practice squad and gets called up for his opportunity to play special teams and eventually has a chance to, pull a Ryan Neal and get off the practice squad and onto the roster and then get a chance to play. You get elite athletic testing numbers like the last 2 guys that we've talked about. Don't count them out because they're undrafted.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah, this is a name I'm going to keep track of because of that size, height, weight, speed thing. It's just, it's enticing, but he's kind of a man without a position.
He is.
So we'll see how that goes. That's it. That's my list.
Nope, that's it. It's a good group. It really is. There's some strength at the top. There's some interesting names down in the bottom. There's maybe not the depth that you want unless you consider Jamal Adams part of that. And then
what if Jamal Adams is healthy, Keith? What does this do to this group? Just dynamic wise, if he's healthy and he demands snaps, what happens to this group?
That's the problem. Is if he is healthy, does him being healthy make this a better defense? He is a fantastic individual guy.
It's hard to know. It's hard to know, honestly.
He does some things as well or better than any safety in the league. But what he doesn't do is traditional safety things like cover. Um,
Yeah.
and and ultimately, when you look at what a safety's job is and what the defense needs as far as, you know, individual
Reliability and
individual assignments for each guy,
yes,
I
that's what
don't
I mean.
know if Jamal Adams makes this defense better. I mean, you want him healthy because they're paying him anyway. They might as well have him healthy. But basically, you want him in situations, and you want Julian Love to play a lot.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean,
A-
to
And
me, Jamal Adams would just be a pass rusher.
maybe Jamal Adams is the answer to the team's linebacker problems, in that they play basically a 3-3 instead of a 3-4 because they don't have that second middle linebacker at the moment. And so they go into a 3 safety nickel with Jamal Adams down in the box.
It'd be interesting if all things are equal and Jamal Adams and Devon Bush or options for Clint Hurt, if they go with Adams on the field and pull Bush out, that would
Mhm.
be that would be the choice. Really
Yeah.
interesting. Yeah. Okay. Let's get out of here. We're going to do a special teams show on our next show. We're going to take a look at the kicker, the punter, the long snapper, but we're also going to take a holistic view of what special teams is, why it's a pillar of Pete Carroll's philosophy, that he wants it to be just as equal as offense and defense. When you're taking a look at a holistic approach as how you build the team. So why it matters, all that good stuff. That's it. Find Keith on Twitter at Myers NFL. You can find me at NW Seahawk. The show is SeahawksPlaybook.com. Go check out our YouTube channel. If you're not watching this now, you're listening to the audio only. We're on YouTube. Search the show. When you find it, hit that subscribe button and make sure we're in your feed for every show we put out. So until next time, go Hawks.
Go Hawks.
Seahawks Playbook podcast listeners, thanks for joining us for another edition of the show. You can find us on Twitter. Bill is at NW Seahawk, Keith is at Myers NFL, and the show is at Hawks Playbook. You can listen and subscribe to the show at SeahawksPlaybook.com.